Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. We are proud to offer this series with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way of Tarrant County. These programs are recorded and are made available for viewing through a YouTube channel for future use. I'm Martha Brown, your host for today, and we are bringing movement brought to you by Peggy Spear from the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. Peggy always surprises me, and I'm excited to see what movement means to her.
Yeah.
Peggy, it's yours.
Righty, let me get us going. Thank you for the introduction, Gail. Gail, why did I do that?
You can call me Gail, it's okay. As long as you call me to dinner, that's what counts.
Right, we're doing movement, and this was one of those words, we did this is the theme for the month for all of our access programs. So we had an autism event with this theme, and our Alzheimer's program on site tomorrow is this. And I picked the word movement, and initially I was thinking artwork that moved, but then there's so many artworks that depict movement, or so many artworks that have artists making grand gestures to create these artworks, that movement kind of just meant anywhere along the way, if movement is involved, then that's what we're covering. So this first artwork covers two of our movements. It actually looks like this figure might be moving or is mid-stride, but the artist creating this was very labor intensive. So you can see it's hammered copper. What do you think this artist was doing between what you're seeing and what the material is?
What is the material, bronze or copper?
Copper.
Okay. So actually, one of the things he had to do is he had to mold the shape before he started hammering on it.
Yeah, well, he actually had, he had to make the shape, and he had to hammer out the copper to form it around the shape.
He
kind of had a little mold in there.
Really?
It could have been wax.
Well, not from what I've been able to find on how he made these. He would start with cold, flat, he would not heat these, flat sheets of metal and hang them. And he would hammer on both sides until he got the shape that he wanted.
Okay.
Oh, that's amazing. That is a lot of work.
It very work intensive, very, very work intensive. And so it'd take, look how long, 7 years. That didn't mean he worked on it every day for 7 years.
Wow.
But it was, starting a project, maybe walking away from it, coming back, walking away. But it was a lot of time, and it's pretty big. It's 39 inches tall.
Wow.
Oh, and 12 inches deep. Yeah. So he started off earlier in his career doing tabletop, little statuettes. And then as he got better and as his artistic practice pushed, he got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so by the end of his career, he was doing larger than life monument type size situations.
Oh my.
But he was not melting. He was not molding this. He was using just a hammer to create what he did, which was totally new. This was a new type of way to work with this medium. He was Russian, moved to the United States to really push his artistic practice in New York City. And he was very interested in the female figure. A lot of his artworks are focused on the female form.
Okay. So is this thing hollow underneath inside?
Yeah, so it's so hard to show sculpture. I should have had another picture, but yeah, it's literally like a sheet of copper that's kind of folded.
Okay. With a tail.
Yeah, it's on an armature so it can stand up.
Okay. I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So I know it looks like a tail in this picture. No, it's supporting the artwork. The metal stick is sticking to that. So then he soldered that metal piece onto it. It does look like a tail. Now that's all I'm seeing.
Yeah, that goes behind the leg then, and then down there in the front.
Yeah. And so it's attaching in the back and then comes down. And so that's the armature that it's resting on.
Okay. Why didn't he put it inside?
So you can see, I wish I had another picture of the back. That if you were to step behind it, so you're meant to view the sculpture in the round. If you were to step behind it, it would be hollow in the back.
And you could see it.
You can see, yeah. So, and you can see he hammered both sides. So he deliberately wanted both sides of the metal to be seen and have that same texture and feel. So the front and the back were equally as beautiful and detailed.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he, when he was in Russia, he was very sympathetic of the Bolshevik movement, and was very sympathetic for the laborers and day workers and things like that. So he mirrored his artistic process to kind of match those who were day workers, laborers, things like that, with the intensity of using your hands, of just a lot of work put into the final product. And so his entire life, that was kind of his homage to those workers, was mimicking that type of day
I was gonna say this looks like it could be like a ballerina or a dancer or something.
It's so graceful. It does, for as loud as you can probably imagine that being, and as much work, it feels effortless. This just feels so almost like it's caught in the wind, even though this person's not wearing clothing. It's got that feel as though it's a gauzy type of metal, not a heavy metal. Or maybe do you guys feel differently, or do you feel that this has that kind of, like Don is alluding to, that like gracefulness of a dancer?
I'm agreeing with you. It's
with the
miracle. It's like a miracle. Something so hard and soft at the same time.
But the statue's right leg is just open. It hasn't been folded, right?
Yeah, it starts to unravel as it curves around. Again, this one view isn't doing justice. It starts to curve around at like it's on the front of the leg, but then it never rounds back out.
Okay.
So Peggy, is this on display right now?
Yes, this is almost always on view. As long as I've been here, it's never come down. So it's this is right when you walk in the museum. Actually, it's the first sculpture that you would see. And actually, no, it's not there anymore. It moved upstairs. But yeah, it's always on view, and it's the only sculpture we have from this particular artist.
Okay.
And he ended up, because his work was so intense with the hammering, he ended up damaging his hearing and losing some control of his hand, of his motor skills, and ended up dying of cancer because of the poisonous chemicals he was using when soldering.
Yeah. Lead is the chemical. Lead is the chemical.
He and Madame Curie died from their art.
So how old was he when he died?
It's 68.
68. Oh, that's no age.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this is one of Ruth's choices. Yes.
I know. It's always kind of funny when you're like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed that one, but okay. So we're going to leave Cantata. And we're going to.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this one.
I think we've done this one before, but I thought this one just is always so fun.
That's movement for sure.
So the Bronco Buster, again, sculpture is almost impossible to do with photographs, but this is our large Bronco Buster. We have 4, I believe, Bronco Busters. Some of them are the statuettes that you put on your table. And then we have the one of his biggies, which is about 32 inches tall.
Wow.
32, 64, 15,
so what are things that are jumping out on you? Because so the theme is movement. Does this feel like this is a still sculpture?
No, it's moving.
No, it's moving.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movement.
Yeah, almost everything is moving.
Yeah.
The horse is moving, the guy's moving, his hands are moving.
Even the rope is moving.
Yeah. And so, so we're seeing all these different things. what is indicating the movement? Like, why are you saying, yes, that's moving?
Well, the horse is rearing up.
Yeah, so only 2 of his 4 hooves are on the ground.
Right.
Mhm.
And it looks like his hat's pushed up in the front, maybe from the wind.
The horse's mane is standing
Yeah,
up.
Horse's
the
mane,
mane. And the tail is moving.
The
tail
tail,
is
yeah.
splayed. Yeah, that's a good one. Look at the fringe on his glove.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
pointing to my screen like y'all can see my hand pointing to the screen.
Well, that's all right, Peggy. Oh, we're doing that. Well, and just his stance,
Yeah.
his
And-
sitting on the horse
I mean,
represents
like, can't you
movement.
feel like your core is engaging? Like, hold on. Like, can't you just
That's
feel
right.
that motion?
Because he's got the arm out to balance himself.
See, look, Norm's got his own little desk version of the Bronco Buster.
Oh,
Oh,
look at that.
wow. Look
Oh,
at that.
neat. Yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Nora.
nice.
Oh, wow.
Right.
He
Yeah.
had Norm. He had a little guy, a little.
The
Welcome,
Bronco
Tom.
Buster is this one, I think we've talked about in the past, has been in the Oval Office multiple times throughout different presidencies. This sculpture is so iconic, American art, cowboy drama that Tiffany's, I believe it was Tiffany's, sold it for a while. So this is one of the sculptures that when you say Remington, almost everyone is thinking of this particular sculpture. And the wild thing is, this was his first sculpture. Never,
Wow.
ever did sculpture. And this is the masterpiece he made first.
Wow. Now, do we know what the horse is scared of?
No, and that's what I'm gonna go to the next slide, because we had I had a cowboy come in and talk to us about, from his point of view, not a curatorial point of view, what he perceives is happening in this sculpture. So let me go, and then we can go back into the still. If you can't hear it, I don't know if the sound doesn't always work when I do these. It is closed caption, so you can just read along. It's about 1 minute long.
Okay.
As someone who comes from a ranching background, specifically with cattle and horses, I feel like I've been in this exact situation before. The rider's hat is pressed firmly against his forehead. I believe that he's traveling at a high rate of speed with a lot of wind in his face. This is probably at the pinnacle of the spook. Notice the horse's ears are pinned completely back. The rider's hand is reaching for balance. One foot is left to stirrup as he's clearly not ready. He's dropped the rope and it's dangling on the ground. I do not believe this is some kind of rodeo, exposition, or cult breaking session, as the rider would not be carrying his pistol or have saddlebags on his saddle. This leads us to wonder if the horse landed safely on all fours or if chaos ensued.
Wow.
That's
It's
cool.
kind of an interesting perspective from someone who's been on a horse a lot. I would never have thought, some of the tags you'll see about this is that this is a rodeo. But why would he have a gun on at a rodeo and saddlebags? I mean, that just feels like he's on, out in the field. But we don't
Plus,
know.
you have to remember, back in the Wild West, they get the guns on all the time, so it didn't make a difference,
Right, but this wouldn't be something from
This
Buffalo
would be, I know
Bill.
this, I'm just throwing it out there, Peggy.
Oh, that makes sense,
Well,
though.
At this time, or earlier, a little earlier, Buffalo Bill, y'all know
Yeah.
Buffalo Bill and his traveling show, they probably wouldn't have been wearing guns in costumes and videos and things we see. They're not typically packing heat for those types of things. So this and knowing Remington, he was really interested in the ruggedness of the West. And by this time, open range cattle was kind of becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah.
That's true.
So this
It was getting there,
he but man, Remington loved to tell a story, and he loved, whether it was painting or sculpture or drawing, he loved to capture it in the highest, the most intense moment of the whole story. And so, like our friend just said in the video we watched, we don't know how this is going to play out.
I was going to comment, his statues are actually more accurate than some of his paintings.
Mhm.
You know, because he used the same headdress with no matter what Indian tribe, things like that. This is actually more accurate for a
Yeah,
real event.
He was really good at horse anatomy.
Mhm.
And, then during his time of painting, we learned, like we've seen in the past, how horses were actually running. So he was able to capture that. And then he, influenced so much of what ended up being Western films with a lot of the drama that he would include. He was also really good, speaking of accuracy. So there were two types of waxing methods or casting methods that were used. One of them is sand cast, which was not as accurate, and the later developed, or not later developed, the one that he then later turned to, he himself, was lost wax. And so lost wax, there were stops along the way where he could go in as the fabrication process was happening and added more detail. So for example, you can see some of the individual hairs on the ponytail and the mane.
Yeah.
You can see some of the veining in the horse's neck.
Mhm.
His mustache has individual hairs. Some of the, what is that? The dally
The
type, or the latigo? I don't know.
I'll get it. I forget. Sorry.
That's okay. I don't even know.
You cinch it up, whatever it is. You cinch it.
Yeah.
You can see the different rounds on his
Yeah.
belt. So he was able to really articulate and delineate details that were often lost with the other casting method. And in some of these iterations of the Bronco Buster, he has woolly chaps on, which are those really,
Yeah.
really textured pants. But this larger one, he copyrighted his design in, I think it's 1895. And then those were for the smaller ones. And then he worked in a bigger scale. And so this wasn't cast in his lifetime. He ended up dying on Christmas Day.
Oh,
And his wife, Eva, was the one that moved forward with all the casting for, it's called posthumously casting. And so his hand didn't actually get to go back in and do some of these details that he got to do when he was living. So some of the ones post-death lack some of the flair, the ones that were made when he was living.
When I was I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say, just looking at how he's sitting on the saddle, he's already lost 1 foot out of his stirrup. If this is breaking a Bronco Buster, he may be well on his way to landing up in the dirt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's interesting you point out the stirrup. In past iterations, when he was not using the lost wax method, the stirrup hung straight down.
Oh,
But the lost wax allowed the strength to kind of flare out like that.
okay.
And what's really interesting is, of course, we look at this and we know it's a beautiful masterpiece. What we had 3D sculptures made here, I'm looking for it. 3D sculptures printed of this artwork. So our visitors who have low no vision or sensory needs are able to kind of touch.
Oh, wow.
And we worked with the TCU Fab Lab. It took us, I think it was something like 17 or 18 attempts to figure out how to print this because of the way it's cantilevered.
Right. Yeah.
It was almost impossible to figure out how we could do this with computer technology.
Mhm.
And he did this his first go at it.
Yeah.
So like the brilliance behind this sculpture, of course we know, but then I had a newfound appreciation for it when we tried to make miniature 7-inch versions of it out of plastic, doing it with metal. It's wild. So,
Mhm.
and to capture all the movement, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just,
Peggy, please tell
Yes.
us again the size of this.
oh, sure. It is.
I missed it.
32 inches tall and 29 inches wide
Wow, thank you.
or deep.
I was going to tell you, during college, I learned this art except we didn't use wax, we used styrofoam.
Oh,
You carve the styrofoam and you pack it into a sand mold. And then you pour in your whatever metal you're going to do it, and it would either melt the wax or just evaporate the styrofoam.
Styrofoam, yeah.
And then you come out, and then you got to buff it a little bit because there's still little pits, little bit of pitting from the sand. Okay, but it's not. It's really fascinating watching it doing it.
yeah.
Doing it itself.
The two processes are very complicated, very time consuming, and fascinating.
Yeah. Now mine wasn't as detailed as you did. Okay.
Oh, old Remingtons. It wasn't.
Yeah, I could do all the
Wow.
stuff. No.
Wow.
Actually, I made a hammer handle.
A hammer handle, okay.
Yeah. For
Well,
made
I bet you got the grain work on that hammer handle pretty good.
I got made aluminum hammer handle.
He made his first, when he started deciding to do sculpture, he tried it in clay first. That's where he said he loved working in sculpture or in bronze because it meant it would live on past him.
Yeah.
Remington had quite an ego. And so he knew that dust and bugs could get to his paintings, and color could fade on his, drawings, but this would last as long as God let it. So,
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if are there very many people still doing bronze?
I believe so. I mean, it's that, I don't know what the foundry situation looks like, nowadays, but the foundry that he was using was Roman bronze work based in New York City. And we have their archives actually here at the museum, but that was like the premier foundry that artists would go to with casting and creating sculptures. So nowadays, I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I'm just saying too, because the metal is very expensive these days, I'm sure. Bronze is not a cheap metal because it's a combination of brass and nickel, I believe. And when you combine it together, that's what gives you the brass.
Yeah.
And it's not a cheap metal anymore. No. So if you have to be very committed if you're going to do it with bronze these days.
Mary Jane, I'm just seeing your message. Yes, I am. What do you think is spooking this horse?
Snake?
Snake.
Ooh, good idea.
That's often the guess when we're in the galleries, a snake.
So there's not a
I feel
sculpture.
I've seen you. You've been at the museum before in a past program with your husband.
Hey, how
correct?
you?
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see you again. I saw you pre-pandemic 2 years ago when I was massively pregnant, and now I'm not. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Could be a
Right.
snake or some other animal that just ran in front.
Yeah.
Is there a sculpture with the animal or a trauma?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope, this is just as it is, and that's part of Remington's story is
You got to think
you
about.
put that story together.
Yeah.
Imagination.
Mhm. All right, we're gonna go to something totally different. So let me. Oh my goodness, there we go.
Well, I've seen this before.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
You have probably seen, this is Alexander Calder. You have probably seen a Calder in almost any museum you've gone in, your entire art museum you've gone in. He is in so many museums throughout the country, throughout the world. Some are massive, hanging from maybe the atrium area of a museum, and some, like this one, are big but not as big as that. So I'm just going to show you a picture of me standing next to it so you have a little bit of reference for size.
Okay.
The dimensions just are 58 inches high, 72 inches wide, 45 deep. So it's pretty big. So here's where I'm standing, and the words are covering it, but you can see it ends about the middle of the first line, and it's hanging suspended from the ceiling.
You'd have to have a high ceiling to be over your baby's crowd.
Peggy, didn't we do our own mobiles with coat hangers when we looked at this before?
Yeah.
Did we look at this before? I couldn't remember.
I think it was a different
Oh,
one.
maybe somebody else was. Yeah.
Okay, I just remember us doing a mobile and I
We
still
did.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
And we had at that time an artwork by a man named Justin Favela who called it Nacho Calder. And
Oh, I
he
remember
made
that.
these-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he made them all nacho chips with cheese and jalapenos and cilantro.
Mhm.
So it's totally different feel when you're looking at it under a white background. So when it's seeing it in space, it never looks the same when you walk into it. It's
Yeah.
just constantly.
And,
So do you guys know much about Calder's mobiles? Have you talked
No.
much about these in other places in your life? Okay. So Calder, as a child, was always very interested in kinetic art that moved. And he, the legend goes, he created like a little rocking horse for his parents that he carved as a kid. And that kind of began his interest in creating artwork that moved. He was one of the first kinetic artists that was accepted in the mainstream. I mean, and it was a bang when his artwork hit the scene. He was good friends with an artist named Marcel Duchamp, who you might know that name, you might not. Duchamp was creating, he called them ready-mades. They were basically objects you find in everyday world, and he was calling it art. So his most famous is the urinal. It's just a little urinal, and that was his, he called it a ready-made. And then he also did things of like hanging a snow shovel from a wall and named it in advance of the broken arm, so it's just, he's a very creative man. So Duchamp and Calder knew each other, and Duchamp titled it mobiles. He's the one that named these mobiles. And so these are what the precursors were for what we hang over babies' beds and things like that. So initially his mobiles you crank to get it to move.
Mhm.
But as his practice evolved, he was really relying on the natural flow of air to then create the different shapes and patterns as it hung. And as you can imagine, just like with the Bronco Buster, balance was
Mhm.
the most important thing.
Mhm.
And so
I'm sure as it's hanging in your museum, just because of people walking by and airflow of the air conditioning, it was moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's what's fascinating about it, because it's something that's static, but it's not static.
No.
Yeah.
And then you've got the
Peg-
really interested viewers who are going,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or waving their hands, right?
yeah, right,
Yeah.
swinging their coat around, trying to get things moving.
So Peggy, I missed what the dimensions on this were.
Oh, yeah, so it's 72 inches high. No, excuse me, 58 inches high, 72 inches wide, 45 inches deep.
That's a big.
Yeah, it's
Object.
I mean, and we have it kind of stanchioned off in a corner, so we don't have those who want to get it moving to move it. But it moves pretty nicely with just the natural airflow within that gallery space.
It's 4.5 feet tall. It's 6 feet wide.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And little bit, but what, 4 feet deep, not quite 4 feet deep.
You tell me, I work in the arts, I don't do math.
Yeah,
so-
that's a big object. Yes. But it's fascinating. That would be fun. That'd be fun to have that in your house.
We'll have to have a
It's
big
kind of like
house.
studying wind chimes. It's the
Yeah.
same thing.
But you'd have to
Yeah.
dust it.
Yeah, I know, but yeah. Yeah, that's where you have the air. You have the air to blow around it, so it keeps the dust off of it.
That's right.
Yeah,
What I
It's
like
kinda
about
like-
it is that
studying different type of wind chimes. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That movement, of course. Sometimes you want to just staple them down because they make so much noise.
Yeah. I know whenever we've talked about this, when I've talked about this with other groups, my younger visitors always say they want to hang it outside on a tree. And I'm like, oh,
no,
No,
in Texas wind, that just ends up being wrapped around a tree branch.
Yes.
But what's so wild is it looks so delicate,
Mhm.
but it's steel.
not.
It's
steel,
I
yeah.
mean, like it is heavy as all get out, but it looks as if it's just these dainty pieces of almost paper.
Mhm.
Mm.
So-
So what is it hung in, you know, from arm to arm? What does he use? Just a thread or metal?
I think that's the aluminum. Wait,
Ah,
No, the steel wire, isn't it?
is it, no,
wire.
steel wire, steel wire.
oh,
Steel
He
wire
used
is what he
aluminum
used.
with
Yes,
favela,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
steel wire.
I like the way it's balanced out. I mean, because that's really
Mhm.
trying to find the perfect balance point for what you're trying to,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
how you want to hang it. That's just pretty amazing. Somebody had to do some work to figure out how to find the balance point for all the different
Right,
objects.
yeah.
well, I mean, and that's part of what made these artworks so incredible to the public, is that it's an engineering feat that he was
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
create these, and on so many different scales. So this is, a pretty decent sized one. I want to say maybe it's the Portland Museum of Art. I can't remember. There's one that spans almost the entire atrium when you walk in. It's larger than life, and he was able
Wow.
to balance these things. So it really was an engineering
Yeah.
genius that was
Yeah.
able to come up with this.
Mhm.
And he loved that it redefined the space. He had a very whimsical side to him, and so, with the blowing in the wind, it changed the space, and it changed the space often depending on where you were standing and what direction the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one more, and again, very different, but movement nonetheless.
Wow.
Trains, yay, trains, you got it there.
Steve,
got
I
it
thought
for
of you
me,
when I
yeah.
pulled this bad boy out. I thought, I know who will like this one. Okay, so Thomas Hart Benton. He was a regionalist. He was working the same time as Grant Wood. We've looked at Grant Wood stuff before. Grant Wood's the man with the pitchfork, and his wife.
Mm.
Oh,
They're all working at the same time. Regionalists were really focused on rural America, which was like Iowa, that Nebraska type of realm of our country. So this is a lithograph. It's it is, I wrote it down, 22 by 37 inches. So it's panoramic. And sometimes this is called express train, but the one in our collection is, we have it titled Going West. So I feel like even in the title, there's motion.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So what indicates movement here?
Well, the angle that the train is depicted at shows it kind of leaning forward,
This
and
is-
Right.
but the telephone or telegraph poles are kind of leaning back. So
Mhm.
maybe that's the perception you have when you're riding on the train, that they're kind of leaning back.
And you see the perception of the wheels,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
wheels
Wow.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
action of the wheels and the levers.
and the smoke.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, the
Oh,
smoke.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he does a really good job of creating this westward motion,
hmm
speaking to this idea of like, it is ours for the taking. This country is growing and growing and growing and can't keep up. You cannot keep up. The wheels are just
Yeah.
pounding and moving, and there is no stopping. This train has literally left the station. We're going west.
well, it's because it's got passenger cars in it.
Yeah.
Freight cars will be in the back, but the passenger cars there, and you can see it, so they're moving the people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
Right.
Come in.
And yeah, and so you kind of too, there's the darkness behind him, or behind this train, and into the light.
Yeah.
So, there's kind of this perception of like, we're leaving what feels like the dark ages behind us, and we're moving
Yeah.
towards this idea of
Yeah.
a brighter future, of more opportunity. And the fact that these telephone poles or, electric poles are included is progress in and of itself.
because they're mostly telegraph poles, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Telephone, telegraph, at that
It
point.
looks like
Not
that.
the 5G poles that were all being.
I'm
turned
sorry,
on
I'm
today.
sorry, I'm sorry, guys.
So yeah, so this Benton was, as a child, very interested in trains, and that fascination with trains never left him. And so he
Right.
often included it as a subject. It was often a reference for the sign of the times. but trains, the drama of the train just always fascinated him. So this is really focusing on the drama of the train, just the actual movement of the train, but what the train signified as well.
Right, yeah. Cool.
For our
It's
new
very,
for our new friends, Norm and Tom, y'all can just jump in here and talk anytime you want to, because this art is about us all sharing. You are so welcome today. Thanks for letting me interrupt, Peggy.
Say that again.
hey,
Martha?
Tom.
I was telling Tom and Norm, they can just jump in and talk
Oh,
anytime
yeah.
they want to.
I just didn't catch that last thing you said.
Ah,
Yeah, please, if ever you have a hot opinion about something, you like it, you don't like it, you have a story to share about whatever we're looking at, the subject, the artist, whatever, please cut me off. I will not be offended.
and sometimes we even ask her to bring things we want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next week we are looking at snow. I think it's
Oh.
wishful thinking that there'll be snow in Texas this year, but I'm hoping it nonetheless. So I will see y'all next week. It was good seeing you. New faces and old faces. Have a good week.
Right.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Peggy.
you, that was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
Bye,
Peggy.
Peggy.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, we have,
Hey,
yeah,
Kristen.
Hi, how is everybody?
Fine,
Good.
thank you. We're seeing some new faces today. This is great.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you have some more people on. That's always awesome.
Yes.
Mhm.
Is there
It is.
something you wanted to share today, Kristen?
Oh, I came over to say hi to Mom and I didn't realize you guys were still on. So I thought I'd just say hi since I was here because I hadn't seen you guys.
Uh-oh.
Okay, she just knocked one of those little door things. That's all.
You're
Okay.
grateful you're here today. Tom,
Oh.
what did you think about the art today?
You know, and in all honesty, I love art. I like to see pictures and paintings and Van Goghs and things like that, and the art and the texture and that kind of stuff. So this wasn't exactly my thing, but I enjoyed it. Don't get me
Okay,
wrong.
great.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
She brings
So,
something definitely different every week.
yeah, no, it'd be boring if you saw Van Gogh, Van Gogh, Van Gogh, Van Gogh.
Yes.
Yeah,
For most people, at least, probably not for me,
Yeah.
but for most people, it would. But,
That's
she
right.
never centers on the same artist
Yeah.
all on the
Yeah.
whole session. There's
Yeah.
different things from different artists, different perspectives.
Norm, what did you think?
Very interesting. And just-
Yeah.
We want y'all to come back and make yourselves at home here. The faces that you're seeing are folks that show up almost every day, and you are as welcome as you can be to come back any old time.
Now the
Thank you.
link that's you got in the email sent to you, they work all the time. Okay, so you don't have to have a new email every day. You can just use that link.
That's right, 5 days a week at 10:30 and at 1:30. Well,
Yeah.
let's take a look at what's coming up. As long as we've got this going, here's Peggy Spear with movement. Now, just for your information, we have a program at 11:30 for folks who are at home who need socialization.
If you get a chance to.
And that is Where in the World is Heather? And she's coming up in another 20 minutes on a little different channel, but it's the same basic program. And at 1:30 today, if you want to come back to this channel, we're having Emily Corbin doing Nia Moving to Heal.
I just don't think Roger.
Now Thursday, that's tomorrow, all three of our programs are doing bingo.
Bingo. All
If you
right.
have missed bingo, you have 3 chances to get your numbers up to win the bingo prize for this month.
Nancy's the leader so far.
So
Yeah,
far,
really.
so good. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I can't tell you how nice it is to see all these faces.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything they want to share before we sign off from this program today?
So is this going to be, or is this going to be the Fifth Street Cafe portion of the program?
Yes.
Yes, it
You need
is.
to take the recording off then if you're gonna do
Of,
Fifth Street.
of course I will. Let's do,
Yeah.
thank you. Right now,